1 year after the battle, the galaxy had transformed in ways nobody expected. The brief conflict between humanity and the Zalcarian Empire had sparked something remarkable, a movement toward what species began calling the New Peace. It was different from simple absence of war. It was active, conscious choice to build bridges instead of weapons. Ambassador Velkan stood before the Galactic Assembly. This was the first time in 300 years that so many species had gathered in one place. He looked out at representatives from over 100 different worlds. 1 year ago, my empire made a terrible mistake. He began. We declared war on humanity because we misunderstood them. We thought their 1,000 years of peace meant weakness. We were wrong. They showed us that peace requires the greatest strength of all, the strength to choose differently even when you have the power to destroy. He paused and looked around the room. Humanity could have ended the Zalcarian Empire in hours. They could have made an example of us to frighten the galaxy. Instead, they disabled our ships without killing our people. Then they taught us. They shared their history, their pain, their hard-won wisdom. Today, the Zalcarian Empire is proud to call humanity our closest ally and teacher. The assembly erupted in discussion. Species that had been rivals for centuries began talking to each other. The example of humanity and the Zalcarians proved that enemies could become friends. That past conflicts did not have to define future relationships. Director Cole watched from the human delegation section. Beside him sat General Hammond. She leaned over and whispered, "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" Cole shook his head. "When I got that war declaration a year ago, I thought we would have to fight. I never imagined it would lead to this." A galactic peace movement started by a battle that lasted less than an hour. Hammond smiled. The best outcomes often come from the worst situations. We turned a potential tragedy into a teaching moment. Now others want to learn the same lesson without having to fight first. After the assembly, Cole met privately with several ambassadors. They all asked the same questions. How did humans achieve the long peace? How did they maintain military strength while pursuing peace? How did they resist the temptation to use their power for conquest? Cole answered each question carefully. The truth is not simple. He explained to a group from the Andorian coalition. We nearly destroyed ourselves. Our weapons became so powerful that using them meant mutual annihilation. We had to choose between peace and extinction. We chose peace, but we also chose to remember, to keep our weapons ready so we would never forget the cost of using them. One ambassador, a tall being named Saris from the planet Valoria, asked a difficult question. But what if someone attacks you? What if they force you to use those weapons? Cole met his gaze steadily. Then we defend ourselves. But even in defense, we choose the minimum necessary force. We proved that with the Zalcarians. We could have destroyed them. We chose to disable them. Defense does not require destruction. It requires control. Saris nodded slowly. That requires discipline. Great discipline. Yes. That is why we train constantly. Not just our military, but our whole society. Every human child learns our history. They see what we were and what we became. They understand that peace is not automatic. It is a choice made every generation. On Earth, in a school classroom, children learned about the Zalcarian incident. Their teacher, a woman named Rachel, showed them recordings of the battle. The children watched quietly as the old warships faced the Zalcarian fleet. They saw the precise shots that disabled enemy vessels without killing anyone. One child, a boy named Lucas, raised his hand. "Teacher, why didn't we just blow up their ships? Would have been faster." Rachel smiled gently. "That is a good question, Lucas. Yes, it would have been faster, but what would we have gained? Dead enemies, and what would we have lost? The chance to make friends. Every person on those Zalcarian ships was someone. They had families, dreams, lives. We chose to preserve those lives because we value life. All life, not just human life. A girl named Emma spoke up. So we fought to teach them not to hurt them. Exactly right, Emma. We fought to communicate, to show them that attacking humanity was a mistake, but also to show them mercy. Now the Zalcarians are our friends. Would that have happened if we killed their people?" The children shook their heads. They understood. This was the core of what it meant to be human in the age of the long peace. Power controlled by wisdom, strength tempered by mercy. In the military museum, Colonel Grant gave one of his last tours before retiring permanently. A group of Zalcarian military cadets had come to study human military history. They stood before the massive warship Indomitable with awe and respect. "This ship defeated part of our fleet. one cadet said quietly. But it did not destroy us. Grant nodded. This ship and I have history together. I commanded it during the battle. Every order I gave was calculated. Every shot was measured. Our goal was not destruction. It was communication. We wanted to talk to you in the only language that would make you listen, another cadet asked. Was it difficult? Holding back when you could have used full power? It was the hardest thing I ever did. Grant admitted. In battle, instinct tells you to hit as hard as possible, to eliminate threats completely. But we trained ourselves to think differently, to fight with our heads, not just our weapons. That takes more discipline than simple destruction. The cadets listened carefully. They were learning something their own military history had never taught them. The true strength is not about winning at all costs. It is about winning in the right way, with honor, with mercy, with an eye toward the future. At Earth's Space Defense Station, Admiral Morrison prepared for his retirement ceremony. Lieutenant Bradford, now promoted to captain, would take over his position. She stood beside him looking at the peaceful displays showing ships from dozens of species passing through human space on friendly missions. It is beautiful, she said. All these different species working together. Morrison nodded. 1 year ago, we faced potential war. Now we have this. Proof that even conflicts can lead to something better if handled with wisdom. Do you think the long peace will last? Bradford asked. Morrison considered this carefully. Nothing lasts forever without effort. The long peace will continue as long as each generation chooses it, as long as we remember why we chose peace, as long as we maintain the strength to defend it. That is your job now, Captain. Keep the peace, but never forget why we have the weapons. I understand, sir. Remember, but do not use unless absolutely necessary. Exactly. The weapons are a reminder, not a solution. They remind us what we are capable of. They remind us why we chose differently. Keep them ready. Hope you never need them. But if you do need them, use them wisely. In the Zalcarian capital city, a monument was unveiled. It showed a human and a Zalcarian shaking hands. The inscription read in both languages. From conflict to friendship. From fear to understanding. From war to wisdom. Supreme Commander Zalketh, now retired and working as a peace educator, spoke at the ceremony. 1 year ago, I led a fleet to destroy humanity. I thought I was protecting my empire. Instead, I nearly destroyed it through my ignorance. Humanity taught us that mercy is not weakness. That peace is not surrender. That strength without wisdom is just violence. We will never forget this lesson. Zeth, now a full ambassador, stood beside him. The younger generation of Zalcarians had embraced the new philosophy completely. They studied human history. They learned about the terrible wars that led to the long peace. They understood that their brief conflict with humanity was a gift, a lesson learned cheaply compared to what humanity paid for their wisdom. On Earth, Colonel Grant sat on his porch with Marie. They had finally taken their anniversary trip. Now they were home enjoying peaceful days. But Grant still received messages from across the galaxy. Former students checking in, young officers asking for advice, species requesting him to speak at their military academies. You are still teaching, Marie observed with a smile. Grant chuckled. I suppose I am. But now I teach from home. Much more comfortable. Are you satisfied with how things turned out? He thought about this. More than satisfied. We faced a potential war. We won without killing. We turned enemies into friends. We inspired a galactic peace movement. What more could anyone ask for? Marie took his hand. The galaxy is lucky to have humans in it. Grant squeezed her hand. The galaxy is lucky we learned our lessons before we met them. If humans had reached the stars before the long peace, we might have conquered instead of befriended. But we learned. We grew, we became wise. That is what makes the difference. As the sun set on Earth, similar scenes played out on worlds across the galaxy. Humans and aliens working together, building together, learning together. The brief battle between humanity and the Zalcarians had become a turning point in galactic history. Not because of the fighting, but because of what came after. The long peace had expanded. It was no longer just a human achievement. It was becoming a galactic principle, the idea that strength and peace could coexist, that weapons could exist as deterrents rather than tools, that enemies could become friends if given the chance. In the museums on Earth and now on dozens of other worlds, old weapons rested behind glass. Silent reminders of past conflicts, teachers of future generations, symbols that wisdom comes from learning, and 6 months after the battle, the galaxy looked very different. The Zalcarian Empire had become one of humanity's closest allies. They opened their borders to human traders and scholars. They shared their technology and culture. Most importantly, they told their story to other species. Ambassador Velkan traveled across the galaxy giving speeches. He spoke about the battle, about how the Zalcarians thought they would easily defeat humanity, about how they learned that peace does not mean weakness. In one speech on the planet Xandria, he addressed a council of 12 different species. "We thought we knew what humans were," he said. "We thought 1,000 years without war made them soft. We were more wrong than we could imagine." The council members listened carefully. One of them, a reptilian being named Cross, asked a question. "But they did not destroy your fleet." "They could have, could they not?" Velkan nodded. "They could have destroyed us in seconds. That is what makes them remarkable. They had the power to annihilate us, but they chose to teach us instead. They disabled our ships without killing our people. Then they explained their history to us. They showed us why they chose peace." Another council member, a being made of crystalline structures named Lith, spoke. "We have heard humans nearly destroyed themselves in ancient wars." "Is this true?" "It is true." Velkan pulled up images of old Earth. "See these scars on their homeworld? Nuclear weapons. Wars that killed billions. They brought themselves to the edge of extinction. Then they made a choice. They decided that the ability to destroy must be balanced with the wisdom not to use it. That is when the long peace began." Cross leaned forward. "So they keep their weapons ready but choose not to use them?" "Exactly. They have 15,000 warships in storage, ships more advanced than anything we have seen, but they use less than 100 for peaceful patrols. The rest sleep waiting, ready if needed but never desired." The council members looked at each other. This was a new concept for many of them. Most species either focused entirely on military strength or gave up weapons completely. Humans had found a middle path, strong enough to defend, wise enough to choose peace. On Earth, life had returned to its peaceful rhythm. Colonel Grant spent his days at the military academy teaching young officers. Not combat, but history and philosophy. He taught them why humans chose peace, why they maintained their weapons, why the balance between strength and wisdom mattered. One day, a young cadet named Jake approached him after class. "Sir, can I ask you something personal?" Grant nodded. "Of course. During the battle with the Zalcarians, were you scared?" Grant thought about this. "Scared of losing? No, scared of winning?" Yes, Jake looked confused. "I do not understand." Grant sat down on a bench and gestured for Jake to join him. Losing the battle would have been unfortunate, but winning the wrong way would have been terrible. If we had destroyed the Zalcarian fleet, we would have created an enemy forever. Fear and hatred would have replaced the possibility of friendship. I was scared we might win the battle but lose the peace. So you fought carefully. We fought with purpose. Every shot was calculated. Every target was chosen. We wanted to end the battle quickly but preserve lives. That takes more skill than simple destruction. Any fool can kill. It takes wisdom to defeat without killing. Jake nodded slowly. That is what makes humans different. Grant smiled. It is what makes us who we chose to become. We were not always like this. We learned through terrible experience. Now we try to help others learn without suffering as we did. At the diplomatic headquarters, Director Cole received a special visitor. It was Zeth, the young Zalcarian student who had visited the military museum. She had graduated from her studies and now worked as a junior ambassador. "Director Cole, thank you for seeing me," she said. "Always happy to see you, Zeth. What brings you here?" "I wanted to tell you something. My government is establishing a new military academy. We are modeling it after your system. We want to teach our soldiers not just how to fight, but when not to fight." Cole smiled warmly. "That is wonderful news. Will you need instructors? We were hoping some of your veterans might be willing to help, not to command, but to advise, to share the philosophy behind the long peace. I think we can arrange that. Many of our veterans would be honored to help. Teaching is their new mission." Zeth looked relieved. "There is something else. Other species are interested too." The Xandrian Council asked if humans would be willing to host a galactic peace conference. They want to learn about building peaceful strength. Cole felt pride swell in his chest. "We would be honored to host such a conference. This is what we have been working toward for 1,000 years, sharing what we learned so others do not have to suffer as we did." 3 months later, Earth hosted the first Galactic Peace Summit. Representatives from 47 different species came to learn about the human approach to peace and defense. They toured the museums. They studied human history. They met with veterans and diplomats. General Hammond gave the opening speech. She stood before the gathered representatives with pride and humility. "Welcome to Earth," she began. "You came here to learn about our long peace, but understand this. We are not teachers claiming perfection. We are survivors sharing lessons learned through terrible cost." She pulled up images of Earth's past. These images show our darkest times, wars that nearly ended our species. We do not show them to frighten you. We show them so you understand why we made our choice. Peace is not weakness. Peace is wisdom bought with blood and tears. The representatives listened in respectful silence. Some had come skeptical. Some had come curious. All of them left changed. They saw that humanity's peaceful nature came not from inability to fight, but from understanding the true cost of war. On the last day of the summit, Admiral Morrison stood in the observation deck of the space station. He looked down at Earth, peaceful and beautiful. Lieutenant Bradford joined him. "Sir, the delegates are preparing to leave. They want to thank you personally for the tour of the fleet." Morrison smiled. "Did they understand what they saw?" "I think so, sir. One of them told me it was like visiting a sleeping dragon. Magnificent and terrifying, but choosing to sleep. That is a good way to describe it. A sleeping dragon that hopes never to wake but remains ready if needed." Bradford looked thoughtful. "Do you think the Zalcarian incident changed things permanently?" Morrison considered this. "Yes, but perhaps not in the way you think. The battle itself was brief, but its meaning will echo for generations. We showed the galaxy that peace backed by strength is possible, that mercy and power can coexist. That is a lesson the universe needed." In his home, Colonel Grant sat with Marie watching the sunset. The anniversary trip they had planned was finally happening next week. "No more interruptions. No more wars." Marie squeezed his hand. "Are you glad you went back?" "Yes, it reminded me why we chose peace, and it showed the galaxy that our choice was not made from weakness. Sometimes you have to demonstrate strength to prove your peaceful intentions are genuine." The young people seem to understand now. They do. They see that maintaining peace requires constant effort. You cannot just wish for peace. You must build it, defend it, choose it every single day. That is what makes it valuable. Across the galaxy, the story of humanity and the Zalcarians spread. It became a tale told to children, a lesson taught in schools, an example studied by military academies and peace institutes alike. The species that nearly destroyed itself through war had become the teacher of peaceful strength. And in the museums on Earth, the old warships rested, silent guardians of a peace hard won, reminders that the greatest weapon is the one you never have to use, symbols that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy but in the choice not to. The long peace continued, not because humans forgot how to fight, but because they remembered too well. And in that memory lay wisdom, the wisdom to choose peace every day, the wisdom that would perhaps spread across the stars and create a galaxy where strength and peace walked hand in hand. 3 days after the battle, Director Nathan Cole sat in a conference room on a neutral space station. Across from him sat Ambassador Velkan, the Zalcarian representative. The ambassador looked much different from their last meeting. He looked humble and respectful. "We owe you an apology, Director Cole," the ambassador said through his translator. "We made wrong assumptions about your people. We did not have all the information." Cole nodded. "You saw 1,000 years of peace and thought we forgot how to fight. You are not the first to make that mistake, but we hope you will be among the last. May I ask something?" The ambassador leaned forward. "Why did you achieve peace? With your military power, you could have controlled this whole region of space." Cole pulled up a holographic display. It showed Earth from long ago. "Let me show you something. This is Earth about 1,200 years ago. Do you see those marks?" Velkan studied the image. "Weapons damage? Nuclear weapons. That is what happens when humans fight humans. Those wars killed billions of people. They almost destroyed our home planet completely. We learned something important during that terrible time. We learned that our ability to destroy had become greater than our wisdom to use it properly." The display changed to show human colonies spreading across space. "So we made a choice. We would seek peace not because we were weak, but because we were strong. We kept our military power sharp and ready, but we hoped never to use it. The best weapon is the one you never have to fire." Velkan was quiet for a moment. And when we declared war, you could have destroyed us completely, within hours. But that is not who we are anymore. We disabled your ships and saved your warriors' lives. We gave you a chance to understand. That is the kind of power we prefer to show. The ambassador sat straighter. My government has authorized me to propose a formal peace treaty between our peoples. We would also like to learn from you. Your way of combining strength with peace is something we want to understand. Cole extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship. We would be happy to teach you. That is what the long peace is really about. Sharing the lessons we learned so other species do not have to learn them through terrible experiences. The ambassador took his hand. We have much to learn. Our people thought war was glorious. We thought military conquest brought honor. But you showed us something different. You showed us that the greatest strength is choosing not to use your full power. Cole smiled. That is exactly right. We spent centuries learning that lesson. Now we can help you learn it without the pain we went through. Over the next weeks, Zalcarian scholars came to Earth. They studied human history. They read about the terrible wars that came before the long peace. They saw images of destroyed cities and dead worlds. They understood why humans chose differently. One young Zalcarian student named Zeth spoke with Colonel Grant during a visit to the military museum. She looked at the old warships with new understanding. These ships are beautiful, she said, but also frightening. Grant nodded. They are both. They represent the best of human engineering, but they also represent our darkest times. We keep them as lessons, not as threats. My people called you soft. We thought 1,000 years of peace made you weak. Zeth looked embarrassed. Many people make that mistake. They think peace means weakness, but real peace requires incredible strength. It is easy to fight. It is hard to choose not to fight when you have the power. We lost many ships in the battle, but you did not kill anyone. Why? Grant looked at the old warship beside them. Because we remember what it feels like to lose people in war. Every person on those disabled ships was someone's family, someone's friend. We could end their lives easily, but we chose to end the battle instead. That is the difference between fighting to win and fighting to teach. Zeth thought about this. You fought to teach us, not to destroy us exactly, and now you are here learning. That makes the battle worth it. No one died, but everyone learned something important. Back at the command center, Admiral Morrison received reports from across the galaxy. The battle with the Zalcarians had been observed by many species. The news spread quickly. Humanity had demonstrated overwhelming military superiority, then chose mercy. This combination impressed everyone. Lieutenant Bradford brought him the latest communication requests. Sir, we have received formal diplomatic inquiries from 23 different species. They all want to establish closer relations with humanity. Morrison reviewed the list. Some of these species have been isolated for centuries. What changed their minds? They saw the battle, sir. They saw that we could have destroyed the Zalcarian fleet but chose not to. Several of the messages specifically mentioned being impressed by our restraint. Morrison leaned back in his chair. Interesting. For 1,000 years we avoided violence, and everyone thought we were weak. We fight one battle without killing anyone, and suddenly everyone wants to be our friend. Bradford smiled. It makes sense, sir. They needed to see proof. Words about peace are easy. Actions that prove peace is backed by strength are rare. Forward the requests to the diplomatic corps. This is their area now. Our job is done. In the military training facility, the young officers gathered to hear from the veterans. Colonel Grant stood before them with Admiral Cross and several other old soldiers. The young officers looked at them with new respect. Some of you thought this training was unnecessary. Grant began. You thought 1,000 years of peace meant we would never fight again. But peace is not the absence of the ability to fight. Peace is the choice not to fight when you can. Admiral Cross stepped forward. You all did well in the battle. You learned fast. You remembered that human excellence in warfare did not disappear. It just went dormant. But dormant and dead are very different things. One young officer raised her hand. Ma'am, will we need to fight again? Cross smiled. I hope not. The whole point of being this good at fighting is so we never have to do it. The Zalcarians learned their lesson. So did the rest of the galaxy. They now know that human peace is not weakness. It is choice backed by capability. Another officer spoke up. Sir, you could have destroyed the Zalcarian fleet in seconds. Why did you hold back? Grant answered. Because destroying them would have taught nothing except fear. Fear creates resentment. Resentment creates future conflicts. But showing strength combined with mercy teaches respect. Respect creates lasting peace. The young officers nodded, understanding. They had learned something that could not be taught in classrooms. They learned it through experience. Real strength is knowing when not to use your power. The old warships returned to their museums. But now they meant something different to people. Before they were relics of a dark past. Now they were symbols of wisdom. Reminders that humanity learned from its mistakes. Proof that the species that once nearly destroyed itself had grown wise enough to control its own power. Children visited the museums with their parents. They looked at the massive warships and asked questions. Their parents explained about the long peace. About how humans chose to stop fighting not because they lost, but because they won too well. About how true victory is not in defeating enemies, but in making friends. The galaxy was changing. Species that once saw humans as mysteriously peaceful now understood the full picture. Humans were not peaceful because they were weak. They were peaceful because they were wise. And wisdom backed by strength is the most powerful combination in the universe. The two fleets faced each other in the darkness of space. 3,000 Zalcarian ships against 300 human ships. By numbers alone, the Zalcarians should win easily, but numbers do not tell the whole story. The Zalcarian fleet opened fire first. Thousands of energy weapons and missiles shot across space. It was an impressive display of firepower. The attack should have destroyed the human ships instantly, but the old human warships moved. They moved with grace that seemed impossible for ships so large. Their defense systems shot down most of the incoming fire. Their armor absorbed what got through. Not a single human ship took serious damage. Then the human ships returned fire. On the bridge of his flagship, Zalketh watched in disbelief. The human ships did not fire wildly. Each shot was precise, perfect. The humans aimed for weapons and engines not to kill but to disable. Within 1 minute, 50 Zalcarian ships went dark. Their weapons stopped working. Their engines died. How are they doing this? Zalketh asked. Their ships are old. How can they be so accurate? His officer looked at the data. Sir, their ships are old, but their weapons are centuries ahead of ours. And their coordination is perfect. They fight like one mind, controlling all the ships. On the Indomitable, Major Chen called out from his station. 57 enemy ships disabled. 0 damage to our fleet. They are regrouping for another attack. Grant watched the screens carefully. They are trying to surround us. Use their numbers to overwhelm us. It is a classic move. Navigation, execute pattern Delta. Weapons, prepare ripple fire on my command. The human fleet suddenly spread out. Each ship moved in different directions. The Zalcarians tried to follow, but the old warships moved faster than seemed possible. Then all 300 human ships fired at once. 200 more Zalcarian ships went dark instantly. Zalketh stared at his screens in horror. Pull back. Order all ships to retreat to safe distance. His communication officer looked up with fear. Sir, they are not following us. They took positions around Earth and are just staying there. Admiral Cross sent a message on an open channel. Her voice was calm and clear. Supreme Commander Zalketh, this is Admiral Victoria Cross of the Human Defense Forces. We disabled over 250 of your ships. We did not destroy them. Your people are alive, just unable to fight. We could have killed them all in the first attack. Do you understand what I am telling you? Zalketh's voice shook when he answered. Those were museum ships. Old antiques. How did you do this? Cross laughed. It was not a mean laugh, but one of understanding. Museum ships. That is cute. Commander, those old ships are the last warships we built before we achieved peace. They are 1,000 years old, yes, but we kept them updated with all our new technology. Want to know why? Why? Because we never wanted to forget what we are capable of. Those ships you just faced, they are from a time when humanity fought wars that were more terrible than anything in your history. We keep them working as a reminder of why we chose peace. Not because we could not fight, because we were too good at it. Silence filled the communication channel. Then Zalketh asked quietly, how many of those ships do you have? In the museum fleet? About 300. In total storage? 15,000. And those are just the ones we kept from the old days. The newer ships, the ones we built during peace. Well, if we brought out our current military technology, this would not have been a fight. It would have been over in seconds. Zalketh looked at his remaining fleet. 2,700 ships against only 300 enemies. They had been crushed without landing a single good hit, and the enemies were using thousand-year-old technology. "I am withdrawing my fleet," he said quietly. "On behalf of the Zalcarian Empire, I apologize. We made a terrible mistake." Cross's voice softened. "Commander, we accept your apology. We tried to warn you. We sent you our history. We wanted you to understand before it came to this. War is not something to start lightly, we see that now." Zelketh replied. "We thought your peace made you soft. We were very wrong. Peace does not make you weak. It is a choice made by the strong. Return to your empire. Think about what happened here, and know that humanity does not want war. We just want to live in peace with all species." The Zalcarian fleet slowly turned around and left. On Earth, people celebrated. The war was over before it really began. No one died. A few ships were damaged, but everyone would go home. In the command center, Admiral Morrison watched the Zalcarian fleet disappear from the screens. General Hammond appeared on his communication screen. "Well done, everyone," Hammond said. "We showed them what they needed to see without unnecessary violence." "That is the human way," Morrison nodded. "Think they learned their lesson?" "I think so. More importantly, the rest of the galaxy was watching. They saw what happened. They saw that humanity can defend itself, but chooses mercy when possible. That sends a powerful message." On board the Indomitable, Colonel Grant stood from his chair. The battle was over. His crew looked tired but proud. They had done well. The young officers had performed perfectly alongside the veterans. "Good work, everyone," Grant said. "You proved today that human military excellence did not disappear. It just went to sleep. But it can wake up when needed. Now let's go home." The crew cheered. They had been part of history. They had fought and won without killing. They had shown the galaxy that peace and strength can exist together. As the human fleet returned to Earth, messages started coming in from across the galaxy. Other alien species had been watching. They saw the battle. They saw how easily humans had won. But more importantly, they saw how humans chose not to kill their enemies when they could have. That impressed them more than the military victory. It showed wisdom. It showed maturity. It showed that humans meant it when they said they wanted peace. Director Cole received diplomatic requests from 15 different species within hours. They all wanted to establish better relations with humanity. Some wanted trade agreements. Others wanted military alliances. All of them wanted to understand how humans had achieved such perfect balance between military power and peaceful living. In his small house, Colonel Grant arrived home to find Marie waiting with dinner ready. She hugged him tightly. "I saw the news," she said. "You did not kill anyone, that was the point," he replied. "We wanted them to learn, not die. Death teaches nothing. Mercy teaches everything. Will you stay retired now?" Grant smiled. "General Hammond wants me to help train young officers. Not for active duty, just teaching them about military history and tactics, making sure someone always remembers the old ways in case we need them again." Marie nodded. "That sounds perfect. Teaching without fighting." "Exactly. The best warrior is one who never has to fight, but who is ready if fighting becomes necessary." They sat down to dinner together. Outside, the world continued as before, peaceful, calm. But now everyone knew the truth. The long peace continued not because humans forgot how to fight. It continued because they remembered too well. In a small house in the American countryside, 78-year-old Colonel Peter Grant got a phone call that made his heart beat fast. His wife, Marie, watched from the kitchen as he listened. She saw his back straighten as he talked. When he finished the call, Marie had already pulled out his old uniform. She got it from storage the moment she heard the news about the war declaration. "Are they really doing this?" she asked quietly. Grant nodded and touched the uniform. "Yes. They want all old soldiers to report to the nearest military base. Are you going?" He looked at her. His eyes had the same fire they had 40 years ago when he commanded a warship. "I have to go. These young people do not know what real war is. They will need help." Marie stood beside him and took his hand. "Then make sure you come back. We have that trip planned for our anniversary." He squeezed her hand. "I will be back soon. This will not take long. All around the world, the same thing happened. Old soldiers left their peaceful lives. In Tokyo, 72-year-old Major Andrew Chen left his teaching job. In London, 69-year-old Commander Sharon Blake kissed her grandchildren goodbye. In Brazil, 81-year-old General Marcus Silva walked into a military building for the first time in 40 years. At the big military base near Geneva, Commander Evans watched the old soldiers arrive. They came in regular clothes. Many used walking sticks. Some had gray hair and wrinkled faces. But when they walked through the door, something changed. They stood straighter. Their eyes looked sharper. Old memories came back to them like putting on an old coat. Colonel Grant found himself in a room with 24 other veterans. A young captain stood at the front. He looked nervous. He could not have been older than 30. "Thank you all for coming," the captain started. "I know this is strange, but we need your help." An old admiral in the back, Victoria Cross, spoke with a rough voice. "Son, do not waste time. Show us what we are dealing with." The captain looked relieved and turned on a hologram. The Zalcarian fleet has about 3,000 ships. Their technology is similar to what humans had many years ago. They fight by using lots of ships at once to overwhelm their enemies. Major Chen raised his hand. "How many ships do we have right now?" The captain hesitated. "Right now, active ships? 87 for defense and protecting civilians." The room filled with laughter. Not mean laughter, but real amusement. Grant wiped his eyes and looked at the confused captain. "Son, what about all our ships, counting the ones in storage, including the stored ships?" "About 15,000 combat ships, but they have not been used in generations." Admiral Cross stood up. Her voice cut through the room. "Captain, let me explain something. Humanity did not stop building weapons because we could not. We stopped because we had too many. Those stored ships are not old junk. They are just sleeping, and you are about to learn why that matters." Over the next 2 weeks, the military bases became very busy. The old soldiers trained the young officers. They did not teach them peaceful ways. They taught them the old ways, the ways of total war. Strategic thinking that had not been needed in 1,000 years came back. In the shipyards, workers brought the old warships back to life. The ships had been kept in perfect condition. Their systems had been updated with each new technology, even while in storage. As each ship powered up, it was like watching a sleeping tiger wake up. Meanwhile, the diplomats were failing. Director Cole sent 17 different messages to the Zalcarian Empire. Each one explained human history. Each one offered peace. Each one warned them about what would happen if they continued. Every message got the same reply. The Zalcarians said humans were weak and just trying to avoid their destruction. On day 28, Admiral Morrison stood in the control center watching the screens. The Zalcarian fleet had entered human space. 3,000 ships moving in perfect formation toward Earth. General Hammond appeared on his screen. "They are not stopping." "No," Morrison confirmed. "They think they will beat us with their numbers and technology. They studied our peaceful fleet and think they understand us. Should we send out all 15,000 ships?" Hammond shook her head. "Not yet. Let's see if we can make our point with less force. Send only 300 ships. Use the old warships from the museum fleet." Morrison smiled. "You want to send a message? I want them to understand. If 300 museum ships can stop their invasion fleet, maybe they will finally listen when we explain what 15,000 modern warships would do." Morrison gave the orders. Within hours, 300 ships left Earth orbit. These were not the peaceful patrol ships the Zalcarians had seen. These were warships from 1,000 years ago. Ships that had fought in the last great human wars. Ships that remembered what real combat was. On board the flagship Indomitable, Colonel Grant sat in the captain's chair. It had been 40 years since he commanded a warship. But his hands remembered. They moved across the controls like he had never stopped. Around him worked a mix of old veterans and young officers. The young ones had learned fast. The old ones had never forgotten. Together they made the ship ready for battle. Admiral Cross's voice came through to all ships. "Remember, everyone, we want to end this fast with few deaths. Target their weapons and engines. Disable them, do not destroy them. Let's show them why humanity chose peace." Grant spoke to his crew. "You all trained hard these past weeks. You know the old ways now. Time to use what you learned. Weapons, get ready. Navigation. Prepare the evasive patterns." On the Zalcarian flagship, Supreme Commander Zalketh looked at his fleet with pride. 3,000 ships. The biggest fleet his empire ever made. Before them was Earth, home to the chaotic humans. His officer came to him with a tablet. "Commander, human ships are coming. We count about 300 ships," Zalketh laughed. 300 against 3,000? They are fools." The officer looked uncertain. "Sir, these ships are different from the patrol ships we saw. They are much bigger. Show me. The screen changed to show the human fleet. Zalketh felt worry for the first time. The ships were huge, 3 times bigger than his largest ships. Their hulls showed age, but their weapons glowed with power. Each ship moved with perfect precision. What are those? The officer checked his computer. According to our information, they match human warships from 1,000 years ago. They are museum ships, sir. Historical pieces, museum ships. Zalketh felt better. Then they are antiques. Old relics. Get ready to attack. Show them what real modern weapons can do. But deep down, a small voice in his mind wondered why humans would send museum ships to fight. It did not make sense. Unless there was something they did not understand about humans. Something important. Admiral Kyle Morrison sat in his office at the space station. He drank his 3rd cup of coffee that morning. The station was quiet and peaceful, just like every other day for the past 1,000 years. Earth and all human colonies had been at peace for so long that most people forgot what war even looked like. Lieutenant Amy Bradford ran into his office. Her face was red and she looked excited. She carried a small computer tablet in her hands. "Sir, you need to see this right now." She handed him the tablet. Morrison took the tablet and started reading. His eyes grew wider with each line. When he finished, he looked up at Amy with a confused expression. "What is this, Lieutenant?" "It is a war declaration, sir, from the Zalkarian Empire. They sent it to everyone about 20 minutes ago." Morrison read it again more slowly this time. The Zalkarians were aliens that humans had met only once 300 years ago. It was a peaceful trade meeting. Now these same aliens were saying they wanted to destroy humanity. The document had 17 pages explaining why humans were too dangerous to live. The Zalkarians said humans were too wild and too unpredictable. They wrote that humanity needed to be removed from the galaxy for everyone's safety. The last sentence said their war fleet would reach Earth in 30 days to begin the attack. Morrison put down the tablet and rubbed his head. "Did you send this to the generals?" "Yes, sir. General Lisa Hammond is calling a big meeting in 1 hour. The admiral started laughing. It started small but then got louder and louder. Soon he was laughing so hard that tears came to his eyes. Other people in the station turned to look at him. Amy smiled too. "I had the same reaction, sir." Morrison wiped his eyes. "Those poor aliens have no idea what they are doing. When was the last time someone declared war on humans?" Amy checked her computer. The history records say it was the Krellian Confederacy, about 1,043 years ago. "And where are the Krellians now?" Amy's smile got bigger. "They do not exist anymore, sir." Morrison stood up and fixed his uniform. "Let's go see what General Hammond thinks about this funny situation." They walked through the station hallways. Other officers stopped them to ask questions. Everyone had heard about the declaration. Some looked worried. Others looked amused. Morrison noticed that the older officers, the ones who had studied military history, all had small smiles on their faces. When they reached the meeting room, it was already full of people. Military leaders, diplomats, and government officials filled every seat. Everyone was talking at once. The noise stopped when General Lisa Hammond walked in. Hammond was 60 years old and had been a general for 30 years. She was known for staying calm in any situation. She sat down at the head of the table and pressed a button. A hologram appeared above the table showing the Zalkarian message. Everyone read it again in silence. "All right," Hammond said. "Let's talk about this. The Zalkarians declared war on us after 1,000 years of peace. What do we think?" Director Nathan Cole from the diplomatic department spoke first. "Have they forgotten our history? We spent hundreds of years building peace. We changed our whole society to avoid war." Captain Brandon Hughes from Naval Intelligence leaned forward. "With respect, Director, I think that is exactly why they are attacking. They think we are weak. They think 1,000 years of peace made us forget how to fight." Commander Julia Evans, who was in charge of defense, smiled a little. "Did they look at our old military records?" Hughes nodded. "That is the problem. I checked our information about the Zalkarians. They are a young space-traveling species. They have only been in space for 500 years. Their own history is very peaceful. They never fought against a really dangerous enemy." Hammond pulled up more information on the hologram. "So they look at our peaceful society now and think we were always like this?" "Yes, exactly. They do not understand what humans were like before the long peace. They do not know that we did not achieve peace because we could not fight. We achieved peace because we were too good at fighting. We scared ourselves so much that we decided to stop. The room became very quiet. Everyone knew this was true. The wars before the long peace had been terrible. They killed billions of people. They almost destroyed Earth completely. Humans had learned that their ability to destroy had become too powerful, so they chose peace as the only way to survive. Hammond looked around the table. What should we do? Director Cole spoke again. We should try to talk to them, explain our history. Make them understand what they are really starting. Hammond nodded. Yes, we will try that. Commander Evans, at the same time, start getting our defenses ready. Wake up the old weapons. How long would it take to turn on our old military equipment? Evans looked at her computer. The weapons themselves work fine. We kept them in perfect condition as museum pieces. The real problem is people. We have old soldiers who remember the old ways, but most of them are retired. Training new soldiers would take time we do not have. Hughes interrupted. The old soldiers will not be a problem. I already got messages from many of them. News about the declaration spread fast. They are volunteering to come back and help. Hammond smiled. Of course they are. Once a soldier, always a soldier. The long peace changed our world, but it did not change human nature. Okay, we have 30 days. Cole, you handle the talking. Evans, you handle the military. Make sure the Zalcarians understand what they are asking for. And if they do not listen, make sure we are ready to show them. Everyone stood up to leave, but Admiral Morrison raised his hand. General, can I ask something? Hammond nodded. What if they do not back down? What if talking fails and they really come to attack us? The general looked at him seriously. Then we remind the galaxy why humanity chose peace in the first place. Not because we could not win wars, but because we were too good at winning them. Morrison nodded slowly. He understood. Humanity had not become peaceful because they were weak. They became peaceful because they were strong. Too strong. So strong that they could destroy themselves. And now someone was about to learn that lesson the hard way,